Hello there and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry and spider mites have completely taken over my favorite vine, which I'm trying to recover on my balcony. So that's that. Today I'm chatting with Eugene Fong, who I met at the animated TV show pitch workshop I did last month at the Toronto Animated Image Society. Now, what's interesting about this chat is that Eugene is not himself an animator or even in the animation industry in any aspect. Instead, he does global supply chain as his day job, but he's currently researching everything he can to make the jump into animation, something I did just a few years ago. So in our chat, you'll hear us talk about the risks of switching careers, our plans on how to do it, and the shock and approach Eugene is currently undertaking. This is a really interesting chat if you yourself are thinking of switching careers into animation right now. Now, besides all this, Eugene used to run the Toronto Role Players Association, and he's currently a published author with 2 children's books under his name. But first, this episode is brought to you by Arcane, the acclaimed Netflix animated TV series that is for your consideration in 2 Emmy Award-nominated categories: Outstanding Animated Program and Outstanding Sound Editing for a Comedy or Drama Series and Animation. Arcane is produced by Riot Games in partnership with Fortiche Production and is the winner of 9 Annie Awards, the most of any TV series or film this year. Now, without further ado, let's jump in. Well, hello, Eugene. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. How are you?
Doing great. How you doing today, Terry?
I'm doing fantastic. It's the summer. It's a nice day outside. I kind of wish I was outside right now, but oh well. So, okay, we met at a workshop that I did on how to pitch a TV show. And then we chatted a little bit, and now you're on the podcast. So maybe, why did you want to come on the podcast? Just question for you.
Well, you actually answered some of it right then and there, because learning how to pitch projects to studios and whatnot was absolutely my goal, and I'm chasing every avenue which teaches me more.
Interesting.
And so I know you are the expert. In fact, you've done some incredible stuff. You've won some contests, is that right?
Yeah. I won the Toronto Animated Arts Festival International pitch competition twice with 2 different pitches. And I won the Ottawa International Animation Festival once with one pitch. So yeah, I won some pitching competitions. I have pitched to any broadcaster you can imagine. Actually, not every single one. I think I still haven't pitched to Apple or Amazon. I think there may be 2 left. And I have an option deal signed with a production company for one of my pitches that we are working on some stuff behind the scenes, which is really exciting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I actually have a pitch meeting tomorrow. So there's that too.
Holy cow. And how much time do you dedicate towards actually the pitch projects themselves?
Oh my goodness. You mean like the pitch Bible package where, it's got all the art and, oh gosh, that's a good, tons of time. I mean, the most recent pitch that I did for Waste World, it's an idea that was kind of running in my head since 2016 that even before I got into animation that I had. So it was kind of in my head all that time. And then when the Taffy conference was coming up with their pitch competition, I think in September of 2021, I decided to actually put my ideas on paper. I started in, I think, May of that year, just kind of casually putting stuff down, went really hard on it in July and August. Took some time off from work to do that, and by the end of August I submitted it. So I'd say that one took a good, I don't know, like maybe a month overall of just full-time working on it, just spread over a while, because it's it's got all the art that I would just sit on my couch doing on Procreate on my iPad for hours. That includes all the exploration of the world and the characters and trying to figure them out and going back and forth with getting feedback on them, and then also pitching it to random people like friends and family and getting their feedback, and what was confusing to them. And then when I got accepted into the festival as a finalist, so much more work is done on refining the pitch and practicing it over and over and getting it in the time slot. So I'd say like a month full time is probably a good estimate for that pitch itself, I guess.
A month doesn't sound like a huge amount of time to me. I can totally understand putting a lot more time into a pitch.
Really? I mean, like 30 days full time, like 9 to 5 I'd say that's a lot of time, no?
I have a tendency to write via all-nighters. I have a tendency to sprint that way. So
okay. So you wanted, backtracking a little bit, you wanted to come on the podcast to, correct me if I'm wrong, learn more about the industry?
That is correct.
Interesting. So this is a grill Terry time instead of a grill Eugene time.
Correct.
Okay, well, you can definitely grill me, but I want to, for those who don't know who you are, I just want to shed some more light on who you are and your background and what your goals are. So can you explain to me, you're not in animation actually right now. What are you currently doing? And then why do you want to get into animation?
So my role is in business optimization, and that is for an international distributor.
Wow.
So international distribution is just simply ordering stuff from around the world and getting it to a place in time for them to use it. And so it's a lot of timing. It's a lot of making replacements and finding new parts where they're missing or not usable. And it's a lot of communication is required.
So this is like your 9 to 5 job, and you've been doing this for?
I've been with the company for 7 years.
Okay.
So
did you go to school for like supply chain management or like international or anything like that? No.
I went to school for actuarial science.
Wow.
I studied mathematics and statistics like no tomorrow.
Oh my goodness.
When I graduated, I ended up stumbling into telecom because telecom was all the rage back then. And telecommunications from there ended up shifting over to a couple other ideas. I ran my own company for a short time, and that wasn't working out so well, and ended up into distribution.
Wow. So pretty direct career path. Or not direct career path, but I guess like not anything animation specifically at all. But you're also a super creative guy on the side. You ran the Toronto Role Players Association. You did D&D competitions. You were a big person in that kind of scene for a while. You also write, and you've got all these creative juices flowing that you're looking to export into.
It definitely is a creative outlet. Really helps you find energy in doing the other things in life. I imagine I can only describe it as that. I find that I have to create things, and it's not some kind of, oh, I wish I could. It's more of along the lines of, I really want to do this. I got to get it out there. And I guess it's because of my Dungeons and Dragons background. I really want to share an adventure with other people. And sort of, if I can bring them into a story or give them a tale that they can think about later, that's my real life goal, to take people out onto an adventure that they enjoy.
Amazing. Right? I love that. So would you say that life goal of bringing other people on an adventure is something that is pushing you to get into animation specifically? Or what is your interest with animation and getting into it, and what are you doing to make that happen?
Well, one, I really love the freedom that animation brings. As much as CGI and what people can do with cameras today is really top notch, animation still remains to be like an anything field. Anything can happen, and it won't cost you an arm and a leg, ideally, right? And so it definitely looks incredibly interesting. And the people that I've met in the industry have been incredibly friendly, which is amazing. And so the more I learn about it, the more I might be leaning towards it. That's how it's turning out. Now, in that regard, what brought you towards animation and not some other creative venture?
Well, I mean, it sounds like we were kind of similar. I I had a degree in business. I started out as a market analyst, then got into brand management, then got into digital marketing, and then ended up in SEO, search engine optimization. But same as you, all throughout my career, I just had to produce something creative. I actually did stop motion animation when I was in high school and then a little bit in university. But I decided that wasn't a career path because there was just nothing going on in Toronto. Well, there was some things going on in Toronto, but there wasn't any viable, stable career paths that I could see in that. So I made this, I remember like specifically even just making a mental note, being like, I'm going to put this big wall up on stop motion to stop myself from doing it, because I would literally come home from high school every day and make something in stop motion. Over the course of a couple of years, I made something like 60 short stop motion films. I made a 10-minute film in stop motion. I made 2 3-minute films. I was like doing film competitions. Like everybody, all the films would be like live action, and I would do like a stop motion film, and I actually won 3 of them, which was amazing in like high school. But because I was just like going to town, and it was like, I don't know, it's just, I was living in like stop motion fantasy land. That's all I wanted to do. I actively put up this wall and said to myself, I'm never doing this again, because there's no career path in it. And if I open this up, like it's going nowhere. So putting up that wall just forced my brain to go into other creative outlets. I wrote a novel, a fantasy novel.
Really?
I like made this giant clay horse sculpture in my living room. I made like a 8-foot by 5-foot acrylic painting of this giant cube with these chicken heads like bursting out and shooting lasers at crystals. Like I was writing short stories. I was painting, like I was doing, I have like this whole craft cupboard because I was just making crafts all the time. I was just doing like anything I could that wasn't stop motion, and I just couldn't stop myself from it. So that's that's what I was doing when I was in business. And then I reached a point where I was like, well, if I can get this far in business, what can I do? How far can I get if I actually go back to my love of animation and see what happens? So I kind of forgot the question you asked me, but that's hopefully the answer that you were looking for.
That's an answer, and that's all that's needed.
That's all that's needed.
But what brought you towards pitch competitions then?
Oh, right. You asked me why animation. The animation thing was because I fell in love with animation when I was a young kid, and getting back to the roots of that just kind of opened the floodgates of enjoying and pursuing it once I went to Sheridan College for animation. Why pitches? Because I don't know. I've always really loved coming up with ideas that I guess are my own, just like my novels and my stories. I really love exploring ideas and coming up with my own unique style and stuff like that. And the pitches is kind of a way to kind of play the lottery with my ideas, I guess. Like I love working on productions, but I have stopped myself from working on like big productions, I guess, because I am afraid of becoming kind of a cog in a machine, where I really value and feel most in what I should be doing when I'm also participating in the idea itself. And like kind of, what am I trying to say? I really like to do my own stuff, even if it's with other people, but I don't want to do something that's just somebody else's idea and I'm just executing it, I guess. So for me to pitch things is a way for me to try to make something that I've created happen that I can work on. And it would be a dream come true if you know, one of my shows gets greenlit and I'm suddenly the director or the showrunner or just involved in it somehow. I would absolutely love that. So I never really thought, I mean, I don't know. I grew up as any kid, just like drawing video game levels and like stories that I thought would be cool. And like, oh, what, I have this really cool idea for a movie. What would, like, how do I make it happen as just one person, you know? So pitches is kind of like a shot in the dark in 1 in a million. If it happens, it can happen. And then I'm also in the animation industry working my way towards maybe making that happen anyways. So it would just be like this fast forward thing for me. And I never thought of pitching until I attended the Taffy conference one year and saw the pitching competition. And they have like 2 pitches go head to head in front of an audience. And then there's a panel of judges from the industry and they vote and then they pick the winner. And then the winner gets like a prize. Sometimes it's monetary, sometimes it's free software, but immediately, you know, all the people at the conference see their pitches, and then there's producers and developers that see it. And I saw this pitching competition. I was like, oh, dang, I should do this. This is great. So then I did it the next year.
Well, I can tell you this much. During the class that you taught, there's so many on-the-spot moments where you essentially took whatever you were talking about and turned it into an automatic pitch that you shared with the class. And I was like, that was like an incredible reflex. Like that was amazing to watch. Was that something you trained for, or were you always good at, like, are you a natural salesman or?
No, I think it's well, thank you, first of all. And just for, if you're listening and you're a little bit confused, I ran in Toronto, the Toronto Animated Image Society runs workshops on various things. And I ran a workshop on how to create and pitch a animated TV show from scratch. So Eugene was one of the lovely people who attended, and it was awesome, you know, hearing your pitch about it was the bubble tea, right? The bubble tea, the
bubble tea
flavor
world.
Bubble tea versus the bland coffee. Loved it. No, it's definitely a skill I've had to develop, as with anything. So with my business background, you know, I think that gave me because even in business school, you know, you have to pitch your ideas, you have to go and present a business case constantly. And then in the real world, when you're actually in a business, you have to, you know, you have a marketing plan, you have to pitch it to the salespeople, and you have to pitch it to your VP, and you pitch it to the CEO. And then that just helps me get feel more comfortable with it. I don't think I'm an expert, but I just feel comfortable with taking an idea, maybe refining it to something that is a bite-sized thing that somebody can handle and understand, and then giving it to them. And also, you know, pitching itself is a nerve-wracking experience. Even when I was pitching to you guys, like, I was shaking and I had practiced beforehand. And,
couldn't tell at all.
I was super nervous and sweating. But I think that's how it always should be. I think you should always be nervous. Otherwise, you just, you know, you don't want to be bored at what you do.
No, fair.
So it's definitely a skill that I've picked up over years. And also running this podcast. I mean, I just published episode 170 something. Speaking on the spot is definitely something that I've had to develop as well. But anyways, I feel like we're just interviewing me at this point. I still want to talk a little bit more about you. Okay, so you are in supply chain and distribution. Mm-hmm. You've been in this for quite a long time. However, you know, sorry?
Long enough.
Long enough. I mean, 7 years at your current job, that's quite a significant amount of time. That's a career right there. You've been doing something, you know, you've developed a career in this field, and you've also been creatively exporting yourself in different areas, you know, Dungeons and Dragons. And then you're working on a script right now, I believe, for a feature film. Is that true?
Well, ideally, I switched over to books. And
books, right.
I'd written 2 children's books, published them during the pandemic era.
Yeah.
So last year, this year. And as I studied writing, I really wanted to improve my ability to tell a story. And so I ended up taking a lot of courses at Second City, the University of Toronto. There was one more. But,
which one did you take at U of T, University of Toronto?
University of Toronto was a novel writing course, finishing your novel, for lack of a better phrase.
Was it run by Carolyn Sweet?
No.
Sorry, Caitlin Sweet. Sorry, Caitlin Sweet. Okay, because I took a novel writing course at U of T that was run by Caitlin Sweet. So I just
really? That's
maybe
amazing.
We took the same course.
No, but it's possible. It's just simply different instructors. I could look her up right now, but I'll save it another time.
It's okay. So you're learning more about writing.
right? And during that period, it just made me really, what the heck was I talking about now? You threw me off course.
So okay, so you've been in a completely different industry, developed a career in there, you know, sense of stability, you've worked your way up, and so you've been in there for quite a while. Why, like, what is compelling you at this point of your life to think about switching things up potentially?
Oh, I see. Uh, Definitely, I enjoy the challenge of it. I enjoy the studying of the industry itself. It's always been magical to me. It's something that, like
Yeah.
you, as you would say, grew up with. And I have a background in theater. I've done theater for over 20 years.
Wow.
And honestly, that was the only place a guy that looked like me could be on stage and be in front of an audience. And as time went by, people began to open up to new ideas and finding new faces. Right now, I'm a long way long shot away from ever being on camera myself. But if I can create stories that I can share and create content that people will be, interested in seeing, I would gladly do it.
Yeah.
Uh, there is some kind of special joy in creating something and then watching someone else laugh at it, or watching other people, enjoy something that you've done. And that's like that.
Oh, 100%. It's human connection. Like the feeling, like I love that. The feeling is like it's like nothing else. And it's you just want more of it forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, for your ideas that you used for the pitch competitions, were these your personal favorite ideas, or did you develop them for the contest themselves?
Oh goodness, the first one, this here I am wanting to ask you more questions, and you just cut it and ask me a question. That's fine. I love this. The first one, the Silly Duck Wizard that I did, I literally saw that the pitch competition was coming up, and I had completely forgot about it and when it was due. And I think I even might have submitted it after the due date, but I put my pitch Bible, which was a 2-page PDF that I drew together the night of. I
Wow.
was like, oh dang,
Whoa.
I have to, I forgot to apply to this and I need something. And I have this short film that I made. Mind you, I had made a short film. It was 1.5 minutes long. So I came up with the idea, and I got my brother to look it over at like 11 p.m. And then he gave me some feedback, I think. And then I submitted it at like midnight. And then literally 3 days later, they're like, we picked you because it was, and I asked why, like, you had so many submissions. Why did you pick this? And it was so last minute and et cetera. And the answer I got was it just looked super unique and kind of stood out versus the other ones, I guess.
Huh.
Which worked to my benefit because like the second pitch I put together for Waste World, I did it kind of the more traditional route. I created a whole world and character interactions and like plot, etc. But for Silly Duck Wizard, I literally was like, here's a short film that I made. It got some attention online, and I have some. I put it together kind of as like a children's storybook. Like his arch nemesis is Pizza Wizard, and they battle, and he has 3 ducks, and they have personalities, and that was like basically it. It was kind of, I guess it was so different and out there that it somehow caught their attention. I think it was mostly because of the short film that I had put together.
Is that why you think you won? Is because it was strictly because it was original? Or?
Maybe. I mean, when I actually because you have to submit like your pitching materials to them, and then you once they accept you, then you have to put together a presentation. But the idea, how I pitched it actually to the conference and the audience and the judges, is I actually kind of wrote a whole storybook, had no put no words in it, and just drew the pictures as I was taking you through a sample episode of the Silly Duck Wizard. And I don't know, I think I won because my concept was very easy to digest. I tried to make it super entertaining and engaging the whole way, as I was just telling you a story, instead of like diving into the nitty gritty of what it could be, I guess. And mind you, the taffy conference that I first pitched it at, I think you're only allowed 6 minutes to pitch it in front of the whole conference, which is not a lot of time. And the other pitch that was, a phenomenal pitch, we're still good friends. They have they had this big world. It was a serialized thing. It was called We Are Woofs, whereas these dogs, these kids that turn into dogs to solve mysteries. And I think mine was just so simplistic and easy to digest in 6 minutes versus, they had a complex world and episodes and arcs, which was super fantastic. But I think just from the perspective of, I don't know, who's to say why I won? I guess it's up to the judges.
Absolutely. And sometimes judging can go the other side just as easily. I understand that. But no, you were definitely tapped into something to have that type of record that you're able to do it.
Well, short answer to your question is, the first time I just dove in with something that I already had, that I thought, why don't I take something I have and put a pitch around it and see where it goes. And the second time with Waste World, I was like, let me use everything I learned from pitching this other project around for a year to every network possible, getting tons of feedback, talking to development people, getting it optioned, even developing it even further. Let me take everything I've learned in that and then create the second pitch. So, but let me ask you this, you see this animation industry as like this magical place, which 100% it is, you watch a movie and you're like, how did this happen? And then you see the credits and there's like 400 people involved and you're like, how did that happen?
Yeah, exactly.
So you see this industry as a magical place, and you see maybe your entry point as a pitch itself. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, actually, one of the things I had done is I had written some people in various other industries, television, and some had worked on movies, and just simply asked them, well, how did you get there? And how does one get involved into this type of thing, right? And one of the most common responses actually was, oh, the things you want to focus on is trying to become a showrunner. You want to focus on being that guy who, essentially creates the show, right? So if there was a single point that they all sort of converged on, the best place to be is to be the showrunner, to be the producer, right? And
yeah, that's super interesting to me. From one perspective, that's exactly what I like. I guess so. Okay, there are different roles when you're creating a show. You have the executive producer who budgets and timeline and everybody involved, and they're also talking with the people who have the money and getting things approved and saying like, you can and cannot do this. Then you have the director who is approving the shots and the style and working with the animation team and the animation supervisors and working with all of those people and the voice actors and the writers, etc. Then you have the showrunner who is kind of doing a little bit of everything. They're working with the writers, they're coming up with the ideas, they're saying the style of the show. Then you have the writers who write the episodes, and depending on the production, all of these people can be completely siloed. The director is not involved in the writing, the showrunner is not involved in the writing, but maybe has some say, or the writers are super I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. But I guess it's interesting for me that you want to be the showrunner, because that's like the hardest thing to become, basically, at least from what I've learned, because you have their network or the broadcaster relying on this person to know what they're doing. And this person should have like a lot of experience in running productions, because an animation pipeline is kind of the hardest thing to make flow in a production, because you have voice actors and writers and storyboard artists and editors and animators and so many people involved, and to get this what's called the pipeline flowing very fluently is a very tough thing. So you want the showrunner to have super experience in knowing how it should go, and while also working with the producers and keeping things creative and not formulaic and all these things. So
I got a question then. When you work, or when you do your work now, do you find yourself wearing multiple hats? Do you find yourself delving into a whole bunch of things, and that sort of like gives you training across the board? Or do you find that your experience has been more siloed?
It depends on the production. Like right now I'm working on a video game. So I'm a 2D animator on the video game. So I'm just 2D animating. So like I'm handing off my tie downs and then they go into the pipeline where they're cleaned up, they're colored, they're programmed, they're put in the video game, it's the voice acting. Like I'm not involved in any of that. I'm literally just working with the creatives running the game to execute their vision with the characters and what they do in the 2D animation. So like I'm pretty siloed right now, but I still have a lot of creativity in, what happens with not the storyline and stuff in general, but what the characters, how their moves go, what they're doing exactly. I still have some creativity and sight in that, but I'm not super involved in everything else. Whereas like other productions, I have worked with the director to, storyboard and animate and character design, and like I'm doing a whole bunch of roles. And then in other roles, I'm literally just like, I was on a stop motion production where I just show up, I animate, and I leave. And I don't do anything else. I'm not involved in the characters, the lighting, but you get super exposure to all those things as well. And you kind of slowly begin to understand how they work and, how your work affects other people down the pipeline and how people before you, how their work affects you. And so you get a better sense of like what makes a good employee, I guess, to continue the flow, and also what people are expecting of you. So
No, this depends on the person, I know, but do you ever find that working on other people's work takes away your time or energy to work on your own personal stuff? Like
yeah,
the amount of creative spoons. So
I'm literally looking at, I have on my kitchen counter, I have like an island and it's just covered in like stop motion like craft supplies and stuff and characters that I have been put on hold for 2 months. And I look at it, I keep it out because I'm like, tonight I'll work on it. But then after work, I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I want to go for a walk. The weather's nice. Like I'm meeting up with a friend or something. I don't want to touch this. So 100% it impacts what I am able to do. I know there are some people out there who just super kill it. They go home from work and then they work till midnight every night on their passion project. And for me, it depends on, I'm very deadline oriented, I guess.
Mhm.
So if you told me this stop motion production is due by the end of the week, I'll finish it, like no matter what. Like,
So
but
like,
since it has a very lenient deadline, because it's more of it's a personal project that I'm involved with a group of artists on. We don't have super deadlines, so it's procrastinating on it.
well, how do you find that? How do you rebuild that energy? Because I've noticed that there seems to be two distinct types of people. Some people, they need to be supported. They need to have people to, you can do this. You're really good at what you do.
Yeah.
Keep it going. And other people are like, you have a deadline. This is going to fail if you don't do this. You got to get like chop chop. Time is limited, and you got to use the time that you have.
Definitely.
It's so. Which side do you feel yourself leaning towards?
Well, I'm going to ask you this right after, put it back on you. But for me, it's two things. Number one is I'm super deadline oriented, whatever. Give me a deadline and I will hit it. Like I'm just that type of person. So that is very motivating to me. But also the second thing is if I don't feel creatively fulfilled in my work, the energy just builds up and I don't know what to do with it until I produce, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So thankfully I'm on a super, super cool project right now that I absolutely love. And I actually find myself like pouring a lot of my creative energy into that versus my person. Like I don't feel a super need at the moment to export my own creative stuff unless there's a deadline for something. So when I was in my business job, that was very not artistically it was creative in different ways, but not artistically creative. Then I found myself like waking up at 5 a.m. to like watercolor just for myself.
Wow.
Before work, just because I had so much drive to export something out of me. But for you, you like your job is not artistically creative, but you're writing right now and you've worked on other things. Like what is your motivation to do those things yourself?
Ooh, it's well, you know how people have that. People have a want and people have a drive. The two separate things, right? And the want of wanting to create something that goes out to a big audience is like a personal goal.
Yeah.
I want to be part of something like that. But at the same time, my own personal drive is that I just love being part of the process. I was always one of those type of guys that I just like being there.
Nice.
Like there's plenty of times when I'm working on an event or a project, and I'm just like, I can't believe I'm part of this. Like I just love the idea of being part of it, and I don't need the spotlight. I just wanted to get it going, get it done, right?
I love that.
And that has always been a combination of those two factors have just sort of constantly pushed me towards things that I can do. And writing is something that you can do by yourself. So that is like probably the easiest. Don't need to cooperate, with anyone. You don't need to work on anyone else's schedule. And then, but my books have not animations. My books have like pictures and like a huge amount of art in them. And so that requires getting a lot of, getting artists involved and getting feedback on that angle and getting feedback on the writing and doing my own form of testing. So it's like just being part of that entire process, I find to be very fulfilling in itself, on top of having to do creativity, right?
Yeah.
Because creative stories are fantastic, but you can only tell so much in a given story. You can't tell all your creativity in one go. Otherwise, it'd just be a crazy nonsense event, right? And so take the best story that you can come up with at the time and try to make it make sense, and then, move with it. And then ideally project 2 and 3, you keep going.
Yeah. So, okay. So if you envision yourself, all resources and opportunities are at your door and you can take any path you want. Correct me if I'm wrong. You would be a writer for animation. Is that right?
Absolutely. If it was
like you can have
like
any role,
like a feature, like a writer for a feature or something like that. Yes, absolutely.
So when you say showrunner, is that something you want to achieve, or is that just something that other people have said like you might enjoy?
Well, to be honest, it might be the only case, because what if you, in terms of you're getting successful pitch projects, where does that put you? Like you just succeeded in making your pitch,
Yeah.
and you suddenly have the arms of an entire studio willing to support your goal.
I'd be executive producer, director, showrunner, animator, and writer.
So there's an answer right there. That's a lot of hats to wear. So
well, I would absolutely love to be a showrunner or director, because I want to work with people who are amazing writers. I want to work with amazing animators and like super creative people and people who like, I am not all of those things. I feel like my expertise comes in like ideas and coming up with something that's a very unique style, I guess. So I want to work with people who are experts in their fields and just kind of be a part of and maybe like influence what we're doing. I'm just excited about that. Like for the Silly Duck Wizard, if that takes off as a show, like I don't want to write the episodes, or I'd love to animate some, but I don't want to be like the main animator at the end of the day. Like I created what I think is like a great concept, and I want to work with a team who like loves the idea and brings it to life in their own way. Like I want it to evolve with how people want it to where they take it. I just think that's exciting. So okay,
dream for Silly Duck Wizard.
Yeah.
What would the ultimate goal be then? What would you've reached your peak? This is the greatest.
My ultimate goal would be to walk into a toy store and see somebody buying the duck plushies for their kid who's absolutely obsessed with them. That's my goal.
That's awesome. Okay.
Like if that is somewhere in the future, I will be over the moon happy. Like kind of how I'm approaching the industry is like, it's like I've said it before, it's a lottery. You're spinning a wheel. It's a 1 in a million chance. If it happens, whatever way it happens, I'll be happy with it. I'll just be happy that I was involved in it somehow, and I'll love it. Now, if it happens where like, somebody steals my idea, comes out with the Willy Duck Pizzard or something, I'll be super mad. I won't like that future at all. So, okay. So given any resource and opportunity, whatever, you would love to be a writer for animation on future films.
Absolutely. Just I love, one of the great things about games and using games as a basis for writing is that it comes with established rules, it comes with established character types,
Mhm.
and essentially someone gives you a bunch of toys and says play with them, right? And taking those rules and concepts and using it to create your own unique story is
Yeah.
absolutely like a thing, right?
So
And
you were
so,
so you were driven to story because of Dungeons and Dragons drove you to story, I guess.
dog.
Yeah, sorry, he was just having to come on my lap. Here he is.
It's certainly changed and shaped how I create stories,
Hmm.
right? Now, what's interesting is that that type of concept of thinking of how to think about stories is sort of coming back around because people are using Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games to workshop their ideas. Where
Hmm.
essentially you play this character, I'll play the other character. This is the scene. These are the rules that we have to abide by because this is the D&D rule set, whatever. And let's solve our conundrum, right?
That's super interesting. I've never actually heard of that before. That's kind of like a brainstorming session. So when you're running a campaign, you'll actually have like a writer be like, I actually like, I'm just saying hypothetical, but like a writer who's like, or figuring out an episode of something or something for their book will actually explore.
Oh, it's something along those lines, but I'd be the guy who's doing everything like you described there. As like if you're running the game, you're probably the one taking the most notes as well
Yeah.
and thinking about it like
Oh,
before
that's
and
super
after,
interesting.
right? So, and then oftentimes you can just take a good idea and it
Yeah.
might not even be a fleshed out storyline, but like I want to think about a world where alligators are giants and they're roaming the countryside and whatnot. And then you can just literally create a game and just throw that in there and just see how people react.
Oh my goodness, I love this. I want to do this. This sounds
Right.
super, super. Because like I just finished the pilot for Waste World, the full script, which was tough, I guess. Because
Mhm.
like I'm like, which idea should I pick, and like how does it impact things? But like, I feel like just putting the world in like a D&D context and just being like, all right, you're this character, I'm this character, let's see what happens, is a super easy way to brainstorm instead of just like sitting down by yourself with a pad of paper being like, what can happen next?
Yeah, no,
Because you're
absolutely.
forced to like tell a story. That's so interesting to me. Okay. So you would be an animation feature film writer, and what, you've written 2 books, which I think is amazing.
Technically 3, but I'm only proud of 2 of them.
Okay, well, you've written 3, you're proud of 2. If you don't hate some of your work, you can't be a real writer, right? Isn't that right?
I'm certain when I look back, given enough time, I will hate all of my work. So this will be fine.
That means you're just improving, which is
Just
great. If you
improving,
wrote
yeah.
one thing and were like, done, I'm good for life, this is amazing, you probably wouldn't be a great writer. So now you're working on a full script. What stage? And you said you're learning about the industry and kind of you took the pitching course, et cetera. What is your like plan, I guess? So, you've written some books, you're writing a script, you're learning about stuff. If you were to like stage out your plan to making, Eugene is the #1 best feature animation writer in the world, what are the next steps to get there?
Well, a lot of it is I can only describe as a shotgun technique or
Okay.
throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks.
So
Because
I
because
love this.
it is a combination of one, I want to have my fully finished script that I really love,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I know there are multiple competitions happening right now, and I want to apply to those competitions, and they're going to have separate specific rules or topics that they want covered. So a lot of nights I will just write plots. I will just literally think of log lines and try to
Wow.
figure out what they are, and just I've what I used to do it as a hobby, actually, as a side interest, just writing log lines and their episode descriptions. And when I hit like 250 or so of them, I realized I should take one of these and write a book with it. And that's how I did my last book, where I just simply took the one that I really liked and just kept going with it.
Wow.
Right.
How long did the book end up being?
Oh, the booklets themselves are pretty not long at all, 30 pages, 35 pages, but it's also like it's kids' book with drawings and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, kids' book would be a bit of a misnomer because I write them in the sense. Have you read Tintin?
I have not, but
Okay.
I used to watch the show when I was a kid, actually.
Right. I actually was a huge fan of that series when I was younger, and the books are written with an adult in mind. However, the pictures and I want to call it animation, but the action scenes help describe what's going on for a child to understand the nuances.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the language and the technology, in my case, I'm using it's a sci-fi, so I use a lot of science in it. Uh, it's really meant like an adult would understand it better.
Yeah.
So ideally, it'd be something that anyone of any age could read or reread in the future and still enjoy it.
I love that. I
Get more out of it.
personally have an opinion about content, and it's that it should be done the way you just described it. I think because especially when you're you're creating a pitch or a show or something, one of the biggest questions you get is like, oh, is it age appropriate? Or like, kids can only think in these terms, or is the language you've used different language than we think it's too high. I don't buy that too much. I think everything should be written for somebody who is older, more intelligent. How am I trying to say? Like, I think the best shows appeal to adults and kids, if that makes sense. Like Adventure Time, or like Bluey, where like it's a preschool show, but as an adult, you can watch it and appreciate the humor in it as well. Versus like, I think when you create something that's just strictly age appropriate, then it's just like curriculum in a school where it's like you're learning. It's like a see Jim run Jim run type of scenario where it's like, oh, this is perfect for a grade 1-year-old, but like there's no, I don't know, it doesn't
I respect that genre because it does need to exist in some capacity. Like little kids need to have a book that they can call their own. Sure, absolutely. But when it comes to the content that like we have a chance to create, then let's make it timeless, right? And that's the idea, 100%. Right?
And I think the best things are like that. So let me ask you this. You wrote 250 episode ideas randomly with log lines, and you seem to enjoy that. Why not pursue episodic writing for TV shows?
The idea has never come to me.
Really? Before this moment?
Before this moment, no.
Because
again, I didn't even know that was a position. I didn't even know that was a job.
Well, like I've talked to, I'm not super versed on it. I'm not a writer myself, but I've had a couple of writers on this podcast where all they do is write episodes for TV shows. And so at least from what I understand, there's a head writer or a writing team of a TV show, but to keep things fresh, they'll often bring in guest writers or hire, like maybe the writing team or the head writer will come up with the season's episode ideas or log lines, and then they'll hire freelance or independent writers to actually flesh out those log lines into full scripts. So, and for instance, like I had Mikey Heller on this podcast, who's the head writer of We Bare Bears, and he got his start because he was posting online comics and like jokes on Twitter and stuff. And then somebody from that project, We Bare Bears, just loved his work and was like, hey, do you want to test out writing for an episode? And he was like, okay. And then they hired him and he ended up the head writer. So like, there's definitely, writing is I know it's super competitive and tough to find stability in, because you might write for like 3 episodes on one show and then that's all they contracted you for, and then you have to look for another show. So it seems to me, unless you have a head writer or writer's team, or like you're a writer at a studio kind of position, it's pretty contract to contract basis. But I guess anything in animations like that, like for me, I've worked on 2 video games this year, and we're 6-7 months, we're 8 months into the year already. So like I have a job for a couple of months and I moved on to something else for a couple of months. So
that's the nature of is that what you would call the nature of the industry itself, that generally it's contract based, and you're working from project to project and they're completely
totally. So because like exactly like, you're writing a script for a movie. Once that say you sell the scripts, you become showrunner or whatever you want to be on the script, or you say, here's, take the money and peace and write your next thing. A studio will set up a whole team to execute that movie. And when the movie's done, they don't need that team anymore. So it's the same with TV shows. When a season's done, they don't need the team anymore.
Mhm.
So they have a choice to try to find work for all those people that were just working for them. So they'll, studios will scramble to continue to get movies and TV shows in to have those same artists. Or they say, good luck, thanks for working with us. And then those artists are sent back into the void of trying to find more work.
Yep, totally fair, totally fair. How do you find yourself in that type of place? Do you find that you are searching for more work, or have you hit a point in time where people are coming to you and saying, hey, next project that you're on, when you come on
Yeah.
board?
Well, I've only been working professionally for a year and a half, really. I quit
Oh, okay.
school last January to take a studio production called Ultra City Smiths. That was only till July. So so far I've worked on 2 TV shows, 2 video games, and a handful of random social promotions and advertisements, and everybody has found me except for the one video game that I was working on earlier this year. I found them and was like, I have to work for you guys. You're too cool. I love you too much. I've been following your work for too long, and you're hiring.
Oh,
So I've
wow.
been very fortunate. But like I also kind of have a shotgun approach. I went to animation school. I had this podcast. I'm meeting new people every week. I have my pitches. I created a short film called The Silly Duck Wizard, and The Silly Duck Wizard, somebody found that on Reddit and then hired me to work on their show called Let's Go Luna. That lasted about a
Wow.
year, actually.
Huh.
I was working on that at the side while I was going to school. And then that work directly led to Ultra City Smiths, which I quit school to take on. And that work directly led to, that work didn't directly lead to anywhere, it just helped with my portfolio. But stuff I'd done in school and the Silly Duck Wizard led to me working on a couple of social promos for various, one studio in the States called Cartoona, another one here in Toronto called Headgear. And then stuff I had done on Let's Go Luna directly led to the first video game, and the second video game I got from a random connection I had from the podcast, plus they had seen my work from all this other stuff. So it's an amalgamation of just, putting a ton of stuff out there and meeting people constantly and trying to do your best.
Now, okay, I understand they're all great and they were all great experiences. I can accept that. But which one gave you the most fulfillment? Which one really, like, you could see yourself revisiting all the time?
Yeah. Oh boy, that's a good here. This is a great episode because I'm asking no questions. So the show called Let's Go Luna, they are a show, they're a 2D animated show on PBS that was produced by a studio called Brown Bag here in Toronto. And the point of the show is to take the characters who are part of a traveling circus to a different country in every episode and learn about that country's culture. In the middle of the 22-minute episode, they take a minute and a half to tell a folktale from the culture of the country they're visiting. And to tell the folktale, they hire independent artists to completely envision and animate in their own style that folktale. So I was able to do 4 of them. So they basically hand me a script and say, interpret this however you like with your own style. And you're basically the director, the designer, the storyboard artist, the editor, the animator, etc. So 2 of the ones I worked on were from North America. One was from North America, one was from the States, one was from Sweden, and another one was from Ireland. And so they're all in stop motion. And I just had a time, I got to design all the characters myself. I got to do all my own research to figure out, of course, you're working with the showrunners who are amazing people, Joe Murray and Peter Hannon, Peter Hannon, he came up with Cat Dog, if you ever seen that, and Joe Murray came up with Rocco's Modern Life. So it was really cool working with them directly. And they have to sign off on what you're doing, of course. But, I got to design everything from scratch, build it all from scratch as well, animate it however I wanted it to, and then, hand them the final product. So those were kind of rare opportunities where I just could do my own thing. Of course, within the confines of this the folktale, but it was basically a dream come true. It was super fantastic. So yeah, I would take something like that again in a heartbeat.
That is amazing. But you brought up an interesting point, is that you've met a lot of showrunners.
Yeah.
And is there a common trait that all of them have?
Oh boy. Common trait. I mean, I asked them all these questions. I would say, you know, they all one of the things is they have to have a super strong vision, because they're going to be attacked on all fronts. You know, the producer is going to say, we can't do that, we don't have the money. The broadcaster is going to say, you know, we don't approve this, or this is too raunchy, or this joke won't fly with kids, or whatever. Then the animation department is going to come back and say this is too complicated, so you have to have a super strong vision and be able to know to keep the heart of what you want to create, given that everybody is trying to change it in some way or whatnot. Because like, even when you know, you write an episode or it's storyboarded out, you have to send it off to the broadcaster for approval, and whoever works there is going to be like, I don't like this, for no reason you don't even know, or like, I like this. So you have to constantly be like, no, we're keeping the color of his shirt red, because that's but honestly, it's stuff like that. Like the notes that I've heard people get are so silly. I've gotten some notes before that were interesting that I didn't super agree with, but like, you just have to know when to pick your battles and what actually is the heart of your show. So that you have to be a super people person, because you're working with so many people. Not a people pleaser, but just like know how to manage people and time, because like, you know, everybody's relying on you to know what to do, and you're working with every department. So management, super strong vision. Yeah. And I would say I've talked to some people who haven't had experience and some people who have had experience. And I think it makes a better time if you have experience with the animation world, just because you kind of know what's going on and what people need, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and the last thing is that I've heard from everybody is like, it's no longer like your idea, it's everyone's idea. Like you can't be butthurt over it changing, or like it not being executed to the exact idea you had in your mind. Like, I don't know if you've writing, so you've probably heard like, you have to kill your darlings, like that expression, where it's like, you have to let things go. So
that's part of the magic of the business, I'd imagine, because it is a cumulative effort where everyone is doing their own thing. And sure, it might be tweaked in a manner that might not be to what you had originally envisioned, but that might only make it better, right? And there's that opportunity where people come together and create something bigger than themselves, right?
Totally.
And
unless you're like an Andy Warhol genius somehow, like the one-man show, you can do absolutely everything. If you were that, then why do you even need, like, I don't know.
That's fair. Is that you? Do you consider yourself to be the
No, not at all. I look at my stuff and I think I do well in like very short, here's a one-line thing that I think is funny, but like turning it into like a 20-minute episode is, I need help. I need a lot of help. But I specifically, like, that's something that I thought about a lot when I was getting into this industry as well. Like, do I want to be a one-man show? In some parts, like, yeah, I have a big ego attached to, like, you know, I did this and this is my idea, but I specifically want, and it's part of why I'm pitching to studios, I want to work with people who this is what they do. I want to be part of something larger. I want to have a roundtable where we're discussing ideas, and I'm not just in this silo of like Terry himself. So, okay, back to interviewing you a little bit.
I'm afraid we've gone too far.
We've gone too far. Okay, so, you know, you're exploring where you might fit in the animation industry and your shotgun approach. So what exactly is your shotgun approach, and what is the end goal?
Well, my true end goal, or my dream come true, would be to rent a movie. Absolutely. Right. And where that would come from is sort of based on where my, like, if I go in this direction and there's a barrier that says no, or telling me I got to go back for school for 10 more years, then I might lean in a different direction and try a different route. And a lot of it is trying to figure it out. Part of it,
Yeah.
like one of the questions I do have for you is that what would you do if you started from scratch? And that's where I am, as in I
Yeah.
don't know anyone in the industry, right? I've never talked to anyone on a professional level saying, hey, by the way, I've got this script at home, like that, or I have this pitch project I'm working with, you know, that type of idea. What would be the best way to take a step forward? What would be the way to show a person to show themselves, like in the
Totally.
most? So what?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I actually, and I think you're further along. I mean, like at one point I told myself I want to be a writer, and I knew that that was masked with the animation thing. And I pursued that until I realized that I should be an animator. So if you're like, if you look deep inside of you and know for sure, like this is my life passion, and this is the thing that I actually like want to pursue, like, because what I'm trying to say that I thought I knew what I wanted with the business thing and whatnot, and I was pursuing a lot of things until I realized what it was with animation, and things naturally started to happen once I kind of said yes to myself, and I said yes, this is what I'm going to pursue. And you know, I started talking to people, I started actually doing animation and whatnot. So I think you're further along already than you think you are. And I think if I were you right now, and I know that I want to write a movie for animation, I would just simply start connecting with people who've done it and talk to them. So for instance, like when I kind of was unsure if I wanted to get into animation and become an animator, I started talking to people. I went to an animation studio. I got like approval from their HR and like sat down with like every single person that was in that studio. I took away their whole day, basically. I sat down with like 20 different people. I'm sure they were like, who the fuck was that guy that just came in? Because like nobody knew I was coming except for the one person who invited me. And then suddenly like people are working. I'm like, hi, my name is Terry. Can I sit down and watch what you're doing? And then I would just grill them and be like, how did you get into this? What would you advise? And so I asked every single person there. And I'd say 2/3 of them said, you have to go to animation school if you want to take this seriously. And 1/3 said, screw animation school. They're going to teach you old ways. You can do this on your own by learning online. And so then I was like, okay, if people that are professionally doing this now and getting paid, and I've been doing this for years, are telling me that I need to learn on my own or go to school, I should probably take what they're saying very seriously and just do it. So I had about, I don't know, maybe 6 months of internal battle of being like, I'm 30 fucking years old. I don't want to go back to school. That's crazy. You get a 4-year degree, like quit my job, go to school for 4 years, do nothing with the hopes that I might get into a studio. Like I can learn this on my own. And then the more I talked to people, I thought, you know what, if I want to take this seriously and actually like say yes to myself, who cares if it's 4 years? Like I'm 30 years old, I'll be 34. And if I end up in animation by the time I'm 34, I'll be super happy regardless. I'm going to be 34 at some point in my life anyways. So I might as well have done the thing that everybody said that I should do and go for it. Luckily, I got into animation school, etc. But I think you should 100% reach out to people who have done what you want to do and just say, hey, listen, don't say, hey, listen. Just be like, hey,
listen,
my name is Eugene. I super love what you do. I think it's amazing that you're writing for animation. And, you know, I'm writing myself and I'm a little bit unsure where to go. Can you just tell me what you did? And
might I ask then, who was your first mentor?
the first person that I ever reached out to, which is the person that brought me to this animation school, her name was Christine. And I found her on LinkedIn randomly when I was searching for animators in Toronto, and I had no clue what I was looking for. This was back in 2017, I think.
You just
maybe?
chose a random person on LinkedIn?
I reached out to a whole bunch of people on LinkedIn, and I was super, because I think I said something like, hey, I'm thinking of getting into animation. I noticed you did animation. Do you mind if like, can we like meet up and chat or something? Which is really weird to like ask somebody as a first thing. And nobody got back to me except for her. And we met up, we got coffee down by the waterfront, by the harbor front. And she was super nice. We had very similar stories, which is why I think that she was working in a factory on the East Coast. you know, doing kind of a factory job and just wishing she got into animation, and then changed her life and when she was a little bit older too, and it was amazing. And she's an animator now in Toronto, and fantastic. And so just having her kind of take the time and share her story and, you know, allow me to come to her studio and see how everything ran, just kind of opened my eyes to like that a real person can do it just like me, because everything seemed like magic, you know. Connections, like you said, connections happen, whispers happen, people get jobs, which 100% is true. You know, it's all about who you, it's not all about, but a lot of the times it's who you know. You get a call from somebody and they're like, oh, hey, you know, we're friends. I like your work. Come on this job with me.
Yeah.
So
in a way, this is one of those things where I don't know why I want to use this phrase, the snake eats itself, but because you end up meeting and talking to all these great writers, when it's time for you to need a writer, you suddenly have a pool of people that you can draw from. And therefore, anyone else on the outside of that, though, is sort of not locked out, but there's a barrier that's naturally created then, because you end up gathering so much talent already, right?
100%. I mean, and if my career is kind of a testament to this, I've gotten jobs two ways. One is from making something that was super high quality and went viral, and people saw it and were like, I want that. Like that was the Silly Duck Wizard. Yeah. And so they like I said, like the director's assistant saw it on Reddit and then told the director, and then he contacted me personally and said, we want you to work on our show. And that was amazing. Like super random, right? And then the second, the way that I've gotten all the other jobs except for the one is that I just knew people from the podcast and talking and school and et cetera. Like I've just known people, even the workshop, you know, I knew somebody who was at Teus and they reached out and said, hey, do you want to teach a workshop on something? And I said, I'd love to teach when I'm pitching. So A, be part of the circle, and B, you know, your shotgun approach, create something. Like imagine you create a script, and I don't know how many people read scripts outside of people who are producing things, but like, you know, imagine you create a book and it takes off, like you write the Hunger Games, for instance, and then suddenly Hollywood calls you up and is like, hey, we want to make this. Like that's a path, but it's a lottery path.
That's right? The lottery path. That's struck by lightning path. Yes.
Versus the other way is like, you know, you ease yourself into the industry, you start talking with writers, you start producing your own writing work, and then you start to hear about opportunities. You hear from one of your writer friends that, you know, they have a need on their show, and, you know, they like you, and you have an opportunity to write something, and then you write for them, and then you have part of portfolio, and then you build yourself up, like, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for you right now, you're writing, which is, I think is great. Like, why not try both? Like maybe start a Twitter where all you do is you publish those 250 log lines and just become known as the idea person on Twitter. If that's a thing, it might not be a thing. You might publish those 250 log lines and nobody cares,
right?
But at least you have something you can share when an opportunity comes up and say, oh yeah, I've been, you know, like, I'd love to come on your show. I've written a couple of scripts. I can do a script test or whatever, but also check out my Twitter where I publish episode ideas, and then they can just easily go, oh, this guy's serious and he's been doing this for a while, even though he's new, you know? So
that's really interesting. I never even considered that there'd be any value whatsoever in just like jotting down like episode ideas or concepts. That's
there might not be. I'm just shooting the shit. But I think in the least,
well, you're making it, you're showing that there is a way that it could be valuable, as opposed to saying it's just shit. So that's,
well, I think I think in the least that if you have something like that, then at least you can show somebody. Like for me, the only reason I have my Instagram is kind of as a portfolio of my work. Like I post like twice, 2 or 3 times a year, but the amount of times that I show my Instagram to other people is tons. Like, because I'm using it as a way to show my work, like the pieces that I want to see, because I know everybody has Instagram. So, and just like everybody has Twitter, maybe there's an opportunity to, like I said, like Mikey Heller, he was posting jokes on Twitter and like short comics, and that's how he got noticed. Of course, that's a 1 in a million chance as well. How many people are posting jokes and stuff on Twitter and never get noticed, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but just the short answer to your question, I think, you know what you want to do, just talk to people who have already done it, and you'll start to learn. They'll give you some tips on exactly where to start tonight or tomorrow. And what if they say, go to school for 10 years? I think, if my opinion is, from doing that, if somebody says to take this seriously, you got to go back to school, I would do it, because I learned, like, even after I got accepted to school, like, up until the first month of me being in school, I was like, I don't want to be here. I'm going to drop out. This is crazy. I'm 30 years old. I'm surrounded by 19-year-olds. Like, why am I here? I can learn everything online. But I'm so happy I went
Yeah.
because you don't know what you don't know until
The,
you know it.
when we started, you asked about the books, and I said I've written 3 books, and 2 of them I'm proud of. That is because I had written my first book in my early 20s, and between that and books 2 and 3, I did go back to school.
Hey,
and for writing,
yeah, you
specifically,
mentioned.
right? And it does make a world of difference. I totally agree with you. It absolutely does make it gives a level of confidence that you might not necessarily have had before, and and having access to algorithms of creation, which a lot of people live by their own. They invent their own algorithms of creation, and just seeing what other people are doing and how they're doing it is, really inspiring. So it's absolutely fantastic. And by the way, you should do that course again. The pitching course was really enlightening.
I
And
will at
so,
some point.
absolutely.
If you're actually listening to this and you're in Toronto, there's a wait list for the next course, which has been undetermined. So at some point it'll happen again. So, but what you just said, I think, hits the nail on the head, because what I learned from going to school is, if I were to pursue animation by myself without going to school, I think I would have had to know exactly what I wanted to do. And like, I would have been like, I want to do, I don't know, 2D animation video game characters. Like, if I knew exactly that's what I wanted to do, then I would just study only that. I'd like YouTube tutorial the shit out of it. I would just do all of that. But like, school, they expose you to everything. I was still closed off to doing stop motion in school, but I had a professor who pushed me to do it, and I ended up doing it, and that really changed my life, literally, and my career. So I wouldn't have done that if I had done it on my own. But what you just said, you're around other super creative people, and just learning from them and how they do things, and getting the feedback from them on your own things is like so invaluable, that you don't have if you're trying to learn on your own. So yeah, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. But then, like, I didn't even finish my degree. Other opportunities came up in the meantime that I took, and I didn't even finish it. So like, say you go back to school for 10 years.
It's the dream, man. How many people would be like dying for that? That's great.
But okay, but you have to understand, the other thing that I had as an advantage going back to school is I already had a degree in business, and I've been working in the industry for nearly a decade. So I approached school completely different. Like, my professors were my peers who I'm taking out to coffee, I'm networking, I'm picking their brains.
Yeah.
I'm like, it was kind of entertaining for me to, like, be buddy with my schoolmates who are like 19, 20, 21. And they're like afraid to talk to the professors who are like my age. And they'd calling them like sir or ma'am. And I'd be like calling them first name basis. Like, and how I approached school was totally different. I approached it as a career. Like, it was a 9-to-5 job for me. It was super serious. I was looking for connections, learning about the industry, approaching it as like taking every opportunity that came out of it, versus like, when you're a student the first time, you're procrastinating every assignment. You're just figuring out time management. You don't really know what expectations are, blah, blah, blah. So like, for you as well, when you went back to school for writing, did you not approach it totally differently than if you were coming out of high school again?
Absolutely.
Like, you learn so much more. And I think, I was in school, I was also running the podcast every single week. I was also creating pitches, and I was working part-time for this other show, like, at the same time. So it made sense, I guess, that I didn't end up finishing my degree. So, but anyways, if somebody, I think you should talk to people who have written for animation, feature films. You'll probably find that they're super interested to chat with you, as I found with this podcast. Literally, there's only a couple people that have said no, which is fine, to the podcast. But most people that I contact are super happy to chat. And what is the podcast? It's literally, I just jump on a call for an hour and chat with somebody about their life, and I pick their brain. But having a podcast makes it seem like super formal and whatever, and there's listeners and audience, but it's literally just connecting with somebody and picking their brain for an hour.
Well, I've got a question then. What made you think about doing a podcast?
It wasn't my idea either, and I didn't want to do it either. I'm very resistant to change, I guess, until I do it, and I'm like, oh, this is great. One of my former boss at the software company, actually, he started a podcast about software as a service businesses, so SaaS businesses, where he would interview VPs and CEOs about how they grew their companies, because he now runs a consulting firm. He was starting his he was the head of growth at our software company, but he started the podcast as a way of learning from them and building his reputation, if that makes sense, and creating some really cool content. And when I first got into animation, he was like, Terry, you'd be silly not to start a podcast. Like I actually started at the Taffy conference that I went to, that I saw the pitch competition at, because I went and I'd done nothing in animation. I was a new student, and I was like, how can I connect with all these really cool people and not just come off as a dweeb? Be like, I really like what you do, and I've done nothing. I don't know what I'm talking about. So he was texting me while I was at the conference. He's like, literally go up to every speaker after they're done talking and say, do you want to come on my podcast and share your career journey? And I said, I don't want to do it. And then by the end of the conference, I was in the line of every speaker. I waited till the very end, till everybody had talked to them, because I was too embarrassed. And I asked all of them to come on my podcast, and all of them said yes. And only 2 ended up following up with me. Brett Jubinville, who runs, oh my goodness, Tin Man, which is an animation studio in Toronto, and Fred Seibert, who at the time was running Frederator. Now he's running Fred Films. And if they didn't say yes, I wouldn't have a podcast. So
wow, that's incredible. And 170 something episodes later, you are like now a master of the craft.
I guess so. But it's just, I mean, yeah, I've learned a lot about podcasting and hosting and asking questions, but it's literally just a chat for an hour with somebody cool like you. But to sum up what I've been trying to say, reach out to people who've done what you do, what you want to do, and just ask them what they did, and then take what they say very seriously and then do it. Because even if it's not your path, you will learn more doing something that was their path than trying to figure it out on your own. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if you talk to a head writer or a feature film animated writer, and they say something like, take this course or join this community, or study this book, like Save the Cat or something, through and through and through, yeah. you should 100% do it. Like, do it to the fullest, like life depending on it kind of deal. Like, I would say go all in, like don't have another option, and see where that leads. And you'll probably end up further along your career, meet new people, learn more, develop your craft more, and you'll be one step closer. Like Eugene right now, I think, is a very interesting phase. He's kind of like in this incubation phase where he's learning, he's like honing his craft a little bit and discovering what he wants to do. And I think at least what happened with me, when I reached the point of, I feel like I've learned enough from where I am at now. I have enough connections that I'm getting opportunities. Then I just, I quit school, and I said, I think I can learn more by being in the industry where I'm having this opportunity now. And I can always come back to school if I want to finish it up. In
absolutely.
fact, the plan was, as soon as I'm done this opportunity, I'm going to go back to school. Well, here it is, the second year later, I haven't gone back to school yet. Who knows? I might go back, I might not. I don't know. But what happens is this domino effect of putting yourself in a new situation, learning more, meeting new people, that leads to more, et cetera, et cetera.
As long as you're keeping your experiences as growth experiences or opportunities, or as long as you're always on the concept of building onto yourself, I totally support that. That sounds like you're doing great.
Well, it sounds like you too. Like, I think it's like after writing my pilot script and even a novel and whatnot, like writing to me is super daunting. Like to write a feature film, that's incredible. I think that you're doing this on your own unprovoked is amazing. That's such a huge task. So
I never thought of it that way.
I think you should, you know, I would love to talk to Eugene in a year and you're like, you know what, I did myself great. I got the script done and it's being made into a film now. That would be amazing.
That would be a great story. Yeah, I absolutely would come back to tell you that for sure.
Yes,
You know.
yes. So, okay, I know you said your goal is to write for animation, but like, and you also want to bring people along on the journey, but what would success be for you? Because I think success is something very different, because success can be, you know, I wrote a script and finished it and that's great, or I sold it and that's great, or it was a blockbuster film, or, you know, now I have a career in writing. Like, what is it at the end of the day that you would, like, you're in this one industry now and you're kind of teasing yourself with getting into something else. At the end of the day, what would be success for you?
Well, not obvious. For me personally, I do find myself when I talk to people in the industry. I used to be a convention goer. I used to love meeting the actors and the people who are part of the business. And in it, I remember distinctly how much certain shows and the creators of them impacted me or changed my outlook on life. And I think that's kind of amazing. Like, even in terms of just like, let's say gaming, for instance. Me and my friends played this game called Robotech, right? And it was like about these giant robots and aliens and all this crazy stuff. And then one convention, the guy who brought the game to North America was there. And I realized then that, holy cow, I'd spent dozens of hours playing this game with my friends. I didn't even think that the creator was someone who was alive or would be here, you know, that like this, it was like completely new to me, right? Like this idea. And then you realize, you know what, that TV show that you love, that movie that you love, the person who made it is in a bar right now drinking a coffee and they're thinking about what the next project will be. And I would love to be someone who inspires other people in that sense, you know, where they just suddenly wake up and say, whoa, that was you, that was like incredible. That like my childhood was based around this, like, you know, that type of like, it's not love, but at the same time, it's not idolization. It's a combination of just happy moments that accumulate together and you just sort of remember them, you know. It's just and it happens all the time now, you know. It happens all in the content that we create today, and if we have the ability to do that on, you know, to make a lot of people happy, that'd be a real great dream right now.
Yeah, I love that. And just hearing you speak, you know, you sound so passionate about it. I think that's amazing. I think it's like I said before, I think it's part of what makes us human, is this, you know, this storytelling ability to share something that's part of you and have somebody else experience it and connect with it. I think that's it's just the best.
Yeah,
it's just the best.
It's the best.
And you're right. And like, you know, we live in a time where you don't need $200,000 to get the smallest production off the ground. You can just sit at home with a laptop or even just your phone and create something, and it's amazing.
It's like we are living in an age where that type of fandom and that type of ability to create a genre is starting to speed up quite significantly. Like what the heck is that? Squid Game. How that just blew up, and then 3 weeks later it was like people forgot about it, right? The ability
well, season 2 is
coming
some life back into it.
But
totally. And that guy been sitting on that for how many years? Like,
yeah, that's an amazing story on its own as well. You know, the guy worked on it, pitched it 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
And only on, well, obviously the last one that succeeds is the one that succeeds, but still, it's like a heck of a story, you know, and it's incredible what people are able to accomplish now. It's
yeah, that's the other thing, is like, just everything takes so much time, and like, you have, because the people who have the money, they do not want to take any risks at all.
Understandably,
They
yes.
so they're like, who are you? Why would I want this? Like, they would rather take something from somebody who already created something, even if it's not the best, and produce that, which is kind of my, I don't know, it's a quip that I have with kids shows. Is like, I see so many and I'm just like, why even bother producing this? It's just content to put on the screen that nobody's going to care about as soon as it's done.
That's actually really, that, like, this is another podcast entirely, but the concept of needing to have star power as someone who's technically behind the scenes, like nowadays directors are just as famous as the actors. And is that a future that we have to work towards, and we need to make ourselves famous?
We could bring up the Mario movie.
Mario movie.
If we wanted to talk about star power that we don't feel is necessary to have.
Fair.
But we'll see how that goes. But yeah, no, I 100%. But I guess that's also what is amazing. Like Eugene, like you as a creator could create something that millions of people see because you just went for it as well. Like, I think that's just as incredible. And yeah, star power, whatever, but there's so many. Whenever I talk to studios, they've all said something kind of similar, is they're looking for more stories from international and different perspectives, because everything for the last 100 years has been an export of like North American white old men type of deal. Nothing, I don't think there's
plenty of successful stories, plenty of great stories.
100%. And like, we all grew up on that, and it was our childhood, and it was amazing. But now, there's so many diverse perspectives and stories that are coming to light now, and people are looking for new creators. Like, they want new and different things. So if there's a time to be writing right now, it should be now.
Absolutely. And yeah, if you have that spark of wanting to do it, I definitely would recommend to anyone that they should look into it.
Well, and the other thing that I've learned just from pursuing this path myself is the amount of people who have an idea and dream about pursuing it, but don't pursue it and don't take it seriously, is like 100 to 1. Like, the amount of people that have talked to me and said like, oh, I wish, like even my own friends, like, we talk about this all the time. Like, my friends have their own passions, but life situations end up leading them in different scenarios. And I happen to be in a spot in my life where I could take a big risk and quit my job and start over again from scratch. Like, I feel very fortunate and lucky that I was able to do that. But the amount of people who want to pursue something and then don't have the right motivation or whatnot is huge. So I think 100%, if you're already here, you need to go for it 100%, because the amount of people that are kind of in your spot and aren't going to take it further, like, there's a big portion of people like that too. And I think it's almost easier to end up like that, because that's kind of what I did for my whole business career. Like, I always had this, oh, one day I'll be an animator, and I was kind of teasing myself with all these like passion projects, but I never pursued it fully. And people would be like, oh, if only, you could be an animator one day. And I'd be like, yeah, whatever. And I do something here and there, but never really see it through. And it wasn't until I really went all in that things changed for me. So I think you're in a good place. Even the fact that you wanted to come on this podcast and pick my brain.
I appreciate this, by the way.
Instead of here, I thought I was going to bring you on and talk about like, what are you doing to get into the animation industry, and like, what are your thoughts? And I just ended up rambling the whole time.
Yeah, you fell for my trap card. This is exactly what I was hoping for.
Oh my goodness.
I greatly appreciate it though. Like this, understanding how to approach this is, I think it's always evolving and it's always changing. And
totally.
Getting your perspective I'm hugely thankful for it. This has been great. Gave me a lot of ideas on what I'm been thinking about and how I should be, reflecting on it. So I appreciate this a lot.
Well, thank you.
No problem. So what's next for you? What are you going to work on next after this?
Yeah, right. Well, I would just wanted to follow up on that thought. Like, before I got into animation, I'm somebody who has a plan, and I have a vision, and I'm like, this is what I'm going to do, and this is the path. And also that's why I didn't want to go to animation school, and why I didn't want to quit school, and blah blah. But if anything, like the path that I have followed has been nothing at all like what I thought it would be. Even when I decided to go to animation school, my plan was animation school, get a job, get an internship storyboarding, then start as a storyboard artist in a studio as a junior, and then work my way up to become maybe a showrunner or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I went to school, and then I quit school. Then I worked on a stop motion production. Then I worked on this other, like my path has been completely, never would have expected it. So like, I'm just saying, like, what you said, there's no path and it's evolving. There is no path and it is evolving, and it's just, you see an opportunity and you take it. Like, I remember talking with John Musker, who directed Great Mouse Detective, Little Mermaid, Moana, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he was working at Disney as an animator at the time, and there came a need to have a director, and he was, you know, he was asked to be the director, and I think he said he refused at first or something, but it wasn't an expected thing that he aimed to be at. It just kind of was an opportunity that he said yes to, that some other people didn't say yes to, and then he ended up becoming, you know, one of the biggest Disney directors of all time. So
Wow.
it's not like he grew up being like, I'm going to be a director of Disney. It's more or less like he followed the opportunities and said yes to them as they came along. And that seems to be, I've talked to people who 100%, they wanted to be a Pixar animator. They became a Pixar animator. I've talked to people who have ended up in amazing things, just where they said, you know what, I took the opportunities as they came, and maybe I wanted to be a Pixar animator, but it ended up being something completely different, and I'm totally happy with that. So I think the only thing that I've learned is that I've kind of, the mantra that I've kind of been following for my path is that I say yes to and rely on myself, I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I try to dig deep and say, like, what do I really love about what I'm doing, and do that, and then see how the world responds and gives me opportunities. I don't think it's always going to work out, but so far, a year and a half in, I'm super happy with it.
No, that's awesome.
But also, like, I didn't have a job. Well, I wasn't pursuing anything, but I didn't have a job for 5 months last year, because after I finished up production, I said, you know, I'm going to take some time off and see what happens. Nothing happened. So I ended up traveling. And then when I came back, opportunities came again. So, you know, I've also been through my amounts of stress and anxiety of being like, what am I doing? Like, there's no work coming. And
no, don't understand that. Wow.
It's not
Heck
great,
of a
because
thing.
I had, you know, when you're not working and there's nothing on the horizon, you're like, well, what the fuck am I gonna do? But here we are.
No, that's great. Like, you're embracing the now, which is fantastic. You're taking advantage of what you're doing. Being able to travel alone is a gift, you know. So like that's awesome. Gain some learning perspectives and understanding, you know, cultures around the world, or whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like that's great.
So let me ask you this. You know, we've chatted for a while. You've kind of shared your goals and where you're at, and you've picked my brain. What are next steps for you?
Next steps for me. That is a very interesting question. I like to imagine that I'm creating some form of reliability when I, you know, put out some books and people can read the content and say, hey, you know, this is a good story, that type of thing. You know, I remember hearing the story about a chef, renowned chef, who wanted to start a business, and his business idea was to create a really good sandwich that people would come back and have that sandwich once a week.
Yeah.
Right. And that was his entire business model. And for me, I want to be able to be consistent with my content, be really good at it, and have people come in once a week for that sandwich. Right. It doesn't have to be super fantastic. It doesn't have to be a giant movie or a piece or a super, you know, grungy or cutting edge, you know, storyline that'll break your mind. But like, I want people to see my stories and, you know, be fulfilled by them and come back next week. You know, it's just that notion of like, I'm at a point in time where I'm not going. I don't want to make one perfect thing. I really would. I'm combination of I need to constantly improve. So it means multiple iterations,
Yeah.
multiple times at the wheel, you know. And so part of my journey next is to continue my improvement, self-improvement, and trying to develop ideas that I can use to present. I think I've hit a point in time in my development where I think I'm ready to begin pitching ideas,
Hmm.
or at least begin the process of pitching ideas. So that might be another year from now, for instance. But the idea of getting used to what needs to be done, talking to people, as you just said, like obviously, uh, that's probably one of the most important skills to have is to meet people and work with them. You're working with strangers, right? And so being able to create that immediate uh, uh, kinship, on a
Yeah.
project is like, that's again another skill to work on. So it's like I have an idea of how I want to get there. I just definitely need to start looking into meeting more people. Well, I'm going to reiterate what you just said, but meeting more people who have succeeded and seeing where that goes, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Okay, so you said something which is really interesting to me, which I think is very pure, is this whole sandwich thing. You just want people to, tune in weekly for something that you wrote and enjoy it. And I think that is amazing. And I honestly think if that is your goal and you execute it, then you should have no problem getting where you want to be, if you become that sandwich that people love. So what's stopping you from doing it right now? Like you've written
Well,
some things, you've
let me tell you, if I got paid a single dollar for my work, I would probably quit my job. But let me tell you,
but
like
no, but I mean, like, you don't have to quit
it's
your job to do this.
no, I'm just making a joke out of that. But uh do you mean like what's stopping me from writing for a show right now, or what's stopping me
What's
from?
stopping you from being that sandwich right now? Doesn't have, because like obviously you're not going to get hired at a show tomorrow,
Yeah.
but what's stopping you from creating something that other people can enjoy every week?
Oh, creating content on like
If
released
that's
content.
your goal.
Uh, that's a very interesting idea. It depends on the level of, see, it's that creative spoons thing again. When you are working, when you're spending your day doing work for one thing, and you have your nights and weekends to
Yeah.
work on your own projects,
Yeah.
it becomes what are you willing to, I guess, put towards it, right? Now, I've got no problem dedicating all my time. I've done some of the things I've put out has taken a lot of time, already. But when it comes to how much are you willing to spend on it? Are you willing to hire 5 people to do this thing? That type of idea. Then it suddenly becomes okay. Whoa, I can't really afford to hire a musician. I can't afford to hire an
Yeah.
artist.
So you're thinking of that thing you want to put out as like an animation every week type
I
of deal.
Theoretically that would be really cool. That'd be really neat to put out a regular animation.
But I
Uh,
mean, like, if you're a writer and you're writing a script and you also have written, other books and things and you have all
well,
these ideas.
based on what we just discussed, new ideas might be the thing. What if I just released a script every week? That's a very
Well,
interesting
like, yeah,
concept.
like well, why not? I don't know. Like, I'm
Yeah,
just saying that
that's
if you
like,
want to become the person that people think of, or not the person, but I'm just saying, like, if you want to give people something that they can enjoy every week, then just do it, right? Like, I don't know.
it's interesting.
Like,
Uh,
you could even, I don't know, release your script through, well, Twitter's an easy example. Like, I don't know if people read super long things there, but why not? Or there are writing competitions every single week. You could just write something, you can get
I've
in
been
a
trying
weekly
that.
habit.
Oh,
You could publish a blog where you update it once a week, or I don't know, just I guess if the goal is like, even, you could, even if you have rudimentary drawing skills, you could start a comic with your stuff.
see, okay, so Oh, I'm opening a can of worms. This we're going to be
I
talking
guess
forever.
all I, you know,
Uh,
I'm not telling you what to do.
no, no, no.
I guess I'm
It,
just saying, like, what is stopping you from, I know you're, you know, you're in kind of the information and education phase where reaching out to people, you're learning about stuff, which I think is fantastic and super well needed. But what's stopping you from also, or just learning through doing as well?
so okay, when it
Like, even
comes
you
to
said it would take you a year. Here, I keep cutting you off. You said it would take you a year to get comfortable with pitching. Why not just create a pitch right now?
oh,
And
I
just
see what
push
you're
it
talking
out?
about. Yeah, you know what? That I can see myself doing right away. I could see myself attempting that.
Yeah,
Like
like the Ottawa festival's coming
when
up. Why not submit something to it?
I should start looking up the festivals. That's a great idea.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
just anything. Like, there's nothing stopping you from creating a pitch and then just pitching it to studios. You could literally contact any studio in Toronto, at least tomorrow, and say, "Hey, you want to set up a meeting? I have a pitch," and then create a pitch for it.
now you have said that your experience is that you've talked to almost every studio out there. How has your experience been? It sounds like that's something you've done.
It is something I've done, and it's been great. You know, there's no barriers to emailing a company and saying I have a pitch.
Fair, that's
And
true.
if they take pitches, they'll listen to it, or they'll what usually happens is they will they'll have you sign an NDA,
Hmm.
which just basically says, like, you're not going to sue them if they develop something similar or have something similar. They have no obligation um to actually create what you're going to pitch them. You have no prior relationship. You're having no future relationship unless you sign into something. And what you're creating is 100% yours. It's just a thing to protect their asses, basically,
Right.
and not protect yours. So they have you sign that, and then once you sign it, you send them the pitch, and then they'll take it. And then if they also, sometimes they want you to pitch in tandem of giving it to you, or sometimes they just take it and look at it and have you pitch it later, or sometimes they just take it and look at it and say thank you. So there's absolutely nothing stopping you from doing this at all. And I mean, even the pitch that you created with the, you know, the bubble tea versus the coffee kingdoms, why not just, you already have something half started. Why not just finish it up and then push it out there? All I'm saying, I'm pressuring you to do this, but
You're giving
I
me, well,
honestly think, at least from my experience, and this is kind of the way I learn, is you will learn so much more through pressuring yourself to go through this high anxiety, personal heartstring thing, uh, then I think you will learn from studying how to do it, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, my first pitch was this, like, I did not pitch it in the conventional way at all. And
mhm.
thankfully it stood out because of that. And I learned so much more through through that experience, that now I'm trying to use all of that to level up myself with my pitching.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Okay, so in terms of writing for animation, okay, let's dive into that for a moment again. Uh, is animation looking for a particular type of story that is, I don't know how to phrase this properly. Uh, like a writer could theoretically write a movie that is both animation or live action, you know, like however which way you want to look at it. But is it just your ability to give the vision that makes an animation more significant? Or is that when you read a pitch for
Yeah.
shows
Yeah.
and you stuck strictly with animation in mind,
Yeah.
were you thinking about the medium is what I'm
Oh,
trying to focus
100%.
on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when you think about the medium itself, is there something that you had in mind? Is there a particular concept that you had in mind?
Yeah. I personally think if you're not thinking about the medium, then why, like, what's the point? Like, uh, I think, yeah, for sure, you can create something live action or CG or
Mm,
animation or stop motion with any story, but, like, you can do things with 2D that you can't do with live action. So that should be part of the story.
yeah.
Otherwise, it would just be a live action film, I guess. Or, like, you can do things in stop motion that you can't do in 2D. So that should be part of the reason. Like with the Silly Duck Wizard, an element that I try to get across is, like, this is for preschool kids. who can literally make these characters, and also if it's merchandise, they can buy these characters and create their own stories in stop motion, which is the first entry point of learning about film for any kid. And so I wanted the text, like I wanted the Silly Duck Wizard to be highly texturized, like felt, plasticine, like shiny paper, so that it came across that this is like an actual real thing, that when a kid is watching it, they understand that this is real and not like 2D, which is, you know, it's real 2D, but it's not something that physically exists in the world. So I wanted to create something that merged their experience with crafts and playtime with what they're seeing on screen. So that's why I made it stop motion specifically. But with Waste World, you know, I want to have like crazy mutants and go to space and go under the earth and all this like fantastical sci-fi stuff that, you know, it can only be done in, I guess it can be done in CG, but that would be crazy expensive. So 2D is the medium. So I think if you're asking like, are you thinking of writing a generic script and just seeing if it can go live action or 2D or something like that?
I was actually, see, that was one of the concepts I was trying to balance in my mind, because when I'm thinking about like, okay, I want to tell a great story, sure. And I have like a bunch of ideas, and then I have to think, okay, I need to think in terms of how much would this cost, right? And when I think of terms like that, then it becomes this, all right, need to, you know, maybe we'll have less explosions, or maybe we'll have less guns, or less whatever. Some, you know, I'm just, you know,
well, I don't think you, I don't think you should ever write with cost in mind, you know, like Game of Thrones or Star Wars wouldn't have been written at all if cost was in mind, you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's a decision a producer would make 20 years from now, when it's not 20 years, but down the line. Like I would promote writing with the truest story intent, and if it calls for an explosion,
absolutely,
make an explosion. And I would also propose writing with the medium in mind, if that makes sense. Like I think if you want to make an animated 2D film, write an animated 2D film. Don't write a film that can be live action or 2D animated, depending on who might pick it up. Because like, you know, getting something picked up is like winning the lottery essentially. So I think you should just write the thing in its truest form, and it'll probably succeed, have a better chance of succeeding if you write it for what it's intended for, than if you write it for multiple versions, just hoping somebody will pick it up, I guess.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. No, I understand. Like the idea of like having a final vision is obviously the biggest part of it when writing it. So that totally makes sense. I was just wondering how, like, theoretically, you could be really flexible with that. You could, but theoretically, right?
I think, I mean, I'm not a writer, so don't get me wrong, but at least from like what I've learned in my business experience and what I've learned from animation is like, write the thing that it's meant to be for the people and the thing it's meant to be, and let execution figure it out. You know, if you write a super fantastical live action film and it's like the best thing ever, somebody's going to see it and go, oh my God, this has to be made, but we're an animation company, we'll figure it out. Or vice versa, you know, like let the execution figure out how it's going to be executed, but write the thing that it should be. Like, for instance, like Harry Potter was never written for movies. It was written to be a super fantasy children's you know, fantasy land. And then Hollywood was like, oh shit, we should take this and adapt it to live action, because that's gonna be the biggest blockbuster hit. We can sell this merchandise, and you know, we can have child stars, and we can do super amazing CG and push the boundaries of that and make it this high budget thing. But also, if you read the books and watch the films, there's a huge disconnect with, you know, the magic that happens in the, not a huge disconnect, but there's so much more that happens in the books that the films just can't justify, you know. So write the thing it's going to meant to be, and don't even think about the execution. I think just focus on the sandwich, like just entertaining somebody. And if you entertain people, other people are going to take that and capitalize on it and make money off of it too.
Yeah, well, that's true. It is a business, nonetheless. The business is still part of the.
It is a business.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Well,
wild.
Eugene, we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry for completely derailing your podcast here.
No, it's fine. This has been super interesting for me. I like talking about this stuff at the end of the day, and I never get interviewed, so I'm super happy. I just hope that you're happy, and I don't know. It's interesting for me to chat with you because I was in your shoes just a couple of years ago. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I will definitely be working on this, and a couple months, year, whatever, I'll gladly give you an update
Oh,
because
please give me
I
a
will
weekly
definitely be
update.
trying. Hey,
If
maybe
that
that'll be the
helps.
show.
If that helps.
Maybe that'll be the sandwich.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well,
We'll see.
yeah. Well, maybe we should wrap up things a little bit. I'm just wondering, are there any topics or things that you thought you wanted to share or that we haven't touched on yet at all?
My book series is on Amazon. It's called
Yeah.
Star Delivery and Star Delivery Mission 2087. Put a lot of love and faith, a lot of love into that. A lot of people worked on it, as well. So it's take a look. My Instagram is Eugene Eats That, where I take pictures of food, and so I have
Sometimes sandwiches.
sometimes sandwiches. So
Well, you did the promos that I was going to do at the end, but I guess
oh yeah,
maybe let me ask you one final question. Somebody's listening to this right now and they're not even at your stage of, learning about stuff or whatnot. What advice would you tell them if they're thinking about getting into writing for books or animation or TV? What would you tell them if they're listening?
definitely take some time to create favorites, find content, books, other writers, other stories that speaks to your heart,
Yeah.
and try to understand what your heart wants to say, right?
Yeah.
Because that is, once you get that internal motivation going, that will give you the defense, the thick skin that comes with the criticism that will come when you put stuff out. And that will always happen. Criticism is part of the game, part of the journey. And so you have to have your own inner stars to guide the way. And that's definitely, it starts within yourself. So, finding who you are is part of it.
I love that. And I think that's really strong and special advice. And I wish we talked about that a little bit more, but I think that's super great. And I've never heard anybody kind of put it that way, because everybody says you have to know how to handle criticism, but what you just said is the way to handle criticism. You have to handle it, but to know your true self and what you're trying to say. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, no, it's I think that's why a lot of creators do what they do.
Yeah.
Right? And people tell amazing stories. They talk in front of millions of people. They inspire equal numbers of people. That's fantastic, right? So
I love it. Well, Eugene, it seems like you're on a super interesting journey, and I'm really happy we chatted and that we met. And I'm super excited to see what you come. I already think it's great that you've published 3 books and you're learning everything you can about this industry. I think that's fantastic. But I'm also excited to see what you come up with. So stay in touch, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been my pleasure. Yeah. And if you're listening, and I'll just plug your stuff again, if like Eugene said, you can check out his books. He's got the Star Delivery series, which has it's in 2 books now, and I'll include links to that and his Instagram in the description of this chat. And thank you so much for listening. And that's all for now. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.